Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network. Welcome back to the show. We are with Margaret, better known as Peggy Smith. She is a woman with many career paths, and today she's here talking more about her work as a hypnotherapist, as a registered nurse. Happy Possibilities is the name of her company, LLC. So she's based out of Philadelphia, but she's making happy possibilities happen all around the world. How are you today, and where are you? Because you're always on the go.
I'm actually at home today. I figured I'd save the gas and not drive to my office.
You're home you're outside of Philadelphia, right?
Yes, outside of Philadelphia, Delaware County, outside of Philadelphia, kind of not too far from where that
Oh,
escaped prisoner.
how cute. Oh my goodness. Oh my, I heard about that. Did they find him or no?
No, but he stole a gun from somebody last night, so
A,
now he's armed.
oh my gosh. Wow. I'm so sorry. Oh, more importantly, is your little doggy. What's his name or her name?
This is Lena. Lena was found on I-95 4 years ago, crawling along the highway. She's partially paralyzed. When they first found her, she could not walk at all. And then she was in a wheelchair for a few years. And when she's tired, she still uses her wheels. But most of the time now, she goes visits patients. She has
Oh,
one eye, and just a real sweetheart. I'm not
oh.
fond of Chihuahuas usually, but she's a special dog.
So holistic care for pets as well as humans. Would you agree?
Absolutely, yes.
Oh,
It's part of the whole picture. I actually have a whole house full of therapeutic pets here. They all
oh.
at different times take turns visiting people.
Oh my goodness. Well, thank you for being here again. For those new time listeners, tell us a little bit about your background, and then we're going to jump right into dehydration for today. I know that's the topic of the day.
Okay. Um, well, I'm outside of Philadelphia, as you said, Jill. My primary practice is hypnosis for pain management and stress management, but I also practice some energy medicine modalities and uh, do a variety of things to help people advocate for themselves in healthcare, so that they don't feel like they're a victim of a big system that is very strange and not very friendly. Today, even though we're getting to the end of the summer, I thought dehydration was a good topic because kids are going back to school. We have the sports kids, high school sports starting up, and it's so easy to get dehydrated, and people don't realize sometimes until they're confused and have a lot of major symptoms that they are dehydrated. And it also mimics so many other medical problems. Um, for example, migraines, one of the major causes of migraines is actually dehydration,
Oh, wow.
and certain medications can actually contribute to dehydration, including Excedrin migraine. But we'll get into that when we start talking about the medications.
Got it. All right, perfect. And so we're going to talk about the symptoms of dehydration, what causes it, and are some people more at risk than others? Age,
Um, they are.
sex?
Anybody can get dehydrated, but it's especially dangerous for very young children and for older adults. Uh, I'm kind of an older adult now these days. It doesn't feel like it sometimes, but other times it really feels like it. It's so easy with temperature extremes. People that work outdoors, the water company, the cable guys, the Pico, the electric people, and that are working out in extreme temperatures, they're at risk. When you're working in that kind of job, there's often not a good place to go to the bathroom, even. And so when you're in that kind of situation, you tend to limit your fluids so that you don't have to take too many bathroom breaks. And that's not usually very healthy.
You're right
Um,
about that.
one of the most common causes in young children is severe diarrhea or vomiting. Older people, they don't tend to drink as much water because sometimes they have trouble holding their bladder, and they are again not always in a place where it's convenient to go, or they don't want to be having incontinence issues, so they just figure they'll wait till they get home to drink. And if they're out all day at the doctor's, or a family trip or something, they don't want to be a bother and need help in the bathroom, so they just don't drink. And there's a cost for that. They actually, it sneaks up on you real fast. You don't realize, you don't feel thirsty a lot of times when you're dehydrated, but one of the first signs might be that you're confused. Um, Elderly people, because they often don't drink enough, they get frequent urinary tract infections, and it's kind of like dominoes. One thing leads to the other, and when you have symptoms of a urinary tract infection, it can mimic symptoms of a stroke because you get very, very confused. Your balance is off. So, water, which is about 70% of our bodies, is really a pretty important thing. A lot of elderly people, you always have your water on the show. I think that's great. Soda actually contributes to dehydration. Um,
I try telling that to my kids. They don't understand that concept. And I'm like, nope, 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 nope.
well, when I was the same age as your kids, my father had a weekend job filling up candy machines on the military base that we lived at. And he would take me to Connecticut on Saturdays to get the candy. And he
Wow.
would tell me that candy puts holes in my teeth. I was only
Ah,
like 6, 7 years old. I believed him. I didn't have my first candy bar until I was 13.
oh my goodness. That's great.
So, children that young are still, although they have a lot of, more sophisticated influences with TV and games and things than I had, but you're still pretty gullible at that age and you trust the adults around you.
True. Yeah, you're
Um,
right.
and especially a younger child, if they see a relative maybe who's a diabetic or, having other medical problems, it's a good time to teach them by saying, well, grandma's got to see the doctor because, sometimes she doesn't drink enough and it causes bladder problems. Or, some children that have bedwetting problems, they don't want to drink, especially if they're going on a sleepover, and they could actually get themselves sick in something. They had a lot of activity and games, physical games at the sleepover, and they're not drinking, they could come home sick.
Good point. Thank you, thank you, thank you.
um, and the signs and symptoms do differ by age. For a very young child, you might see dry mucous membranes, the mouth and tongue might be really dry. um, no tears if they're crying. But it's funny, when my kids were babies, if they were no tears, we just kind of
Yeah,
laughed and said, "You don't even have tears. You're not really crying." No wet diapers for 3 hours for a very young child. That would be a sign that something is not right. Because when you're dehydrated, your body's going to pull in all what little fluid you have and hold on to it. Um, and then for a baby, the soft spot that's not completely closed yet, that actually is more sunken in than normal. And that's a sign of a newborn being dehydrated. And even for a baby that's breastfeeding frequently, or you're getting the regular formulas and stuff like that, maybe they're not tolerating the formula or the breast milk and they have diarrhea from it. And you expect, oh, babies have a lot of messy diapers, but too many might be enough to show that to cause dehydration. Fever can also cause dehydration in a young child and an older person very much quicker than it can a middle-aged person. For adults, they might or might not be thirsty. They might not be going to the bathroom as often. When they do go, the urine is usually tea colored, very dark, and they're just exhausted. Sometimes they're dizzy, they're feeling confused. Um, you start losing things. You just don't feel like yourself, but you don't can't put your finger on it. And as far as when to call your doctor, if you've had diarrhea more than 24 hours, uh, and even if you maybe have irritable bowel and it's worse than usual and the Imodium or something didn't help you, you need to let your doctor know. If you're sleepier than usual, just can't focus on things, uh, if you can't keep fluids down, or if you have either bloody or black bowel movements, that's a sign of dehydration. And sometimes it's just because it happens because you're just too busy to drink. I know as a visiting nurse, a lot of times I'm in homes that I would not like to use their restroom, and or it's just too much going on and it's not convenient for me to do that. So I tend not to drink when I'm in the car throughout the day visiting people. But that's not a healthy habit, but that's common. Nurses that work in the hospital, We have a big joke that we're going to put a catheter in ourselves at 7 in the morning so that because we don't have time to go to the bathroom until 8 o'clock at night. Um, but it's also if you have a fever, and a lot of times, especially with all the people that were getting COVID, and that didn't always come with a fever, but a respiratory infection like that can dehydrate you, and it comes on real fast. You don't realize until you're already feeling major symptoms. If you're going to the bathroom more often than usual, you have to really urinate a whole bunch. It could be that you're prescribed drugs. Sorry about that.
It's okay.
That's my deaf dog. She just discovered she can look out the window. Just ignore her. I can't yell at her because she won't hear me. But adults that are on water pills, uh, sometimes they get a sodium potassium imbalance. A lot of times people don't get the blood work the doctor prescribes on a timely manner because it's supposed to be fasting and they forget. And then a couple weeks go by and they still haven't had their fasting blood work. And it could be they're on medications that need to be really monitored closely just to avoid situations like that. Um, like I said, with young children, usually diarrhea, because they have such a small body compared to the fluid and all that, it doesn't take much for them to get dehydrated. Older people, the bladder doesn't hold as much as it used to. Your skin is drier. You lose water in your body naturally a lot more than you do when you're younger. And if you have chronic illnesses or you're on chemotherapy, things like that, it's more important to hydrate even more than normally. They say the average person should have probably about 15 cups of water a day, which, they used to say like, 6 8 ounce
Something with
bottles.
your weight, right? You got to multiply it by a pound. I don't remember.
Right. And, everybody's on diets trying to lose weight. There's actually a lot of complications. Certain diets, even diets that we've known to be very healthy, um, keto diets contribute to dehydration. There's just a whole bunch of the intermittent fasting that is not healthy from a hydration standpoint. There's if you're going on a diet, you need to look at the medications you're already on. If you're an older person and starting to be medicated for different things, uh, if you take psychiatric medicine, as
Yeah.
most of the population does nowadays, it's a
Uh-huh.
stressful world. Dehydration can actually cause toxic blood levels of your medication.
Oh, wow.
If you're a diabetic and you're taking certain medications and you're dehydrated because either your kidneys aren't functioning well or you're just taking a water pill on top of the other things you take, losing too much water can actually cause toxic levels of seizure medications. It could cause toxic levels of different psychiatric antidepressants, lithium, especially that people aren't on lithium as much anymore. And they used to say once you were on that, you were on it for life, and you really had to watch your fluid balance. With all the newer drugs that are out now, very often you don't have to be on it for life, but it's a decision you and your doctor make, not one. And if you're on medication that doesn't do well because of your water balance, you don't just stop the medication because then you're going to have a lot more problems than being dehydrated.
Yeah.
Water helps all the cells and tissues survive. It helps you get rid of waste in your body. It helps you regenerate new piglet. Excuse me.
Oh,
Water is a very important function in our in our life, and we have to take it a lot more serious. People think, oh, it's just water, it's no big deal. I'll drink more. And if you're out all day and you don't want to drink, you think you're going to drink when you get home. Well, then it's like, gee, I don't want to be up all night peeing, so I'm not going to drink either. I'll drink tomorrow. And, your body doesn't appreciate that too much. um, do you have any questions so far?
well, what else is good hydration? You say water's number one, right? Soda, I
Yeah,
really
and
didn't think.
if you're chronically ill, or if you're like have kidney problems and you have fluid restrictions, you still have to hydrate, but it's a lot trickier because you're only allowed sometimes as much as 32 ounces in a day. And that's not a whole lot. That's 3 8-ounce bottles of water. But it's not just the water you drink. It counts. Your coffee counts as those 8 ounces. Um, if you have a cup of soup, that's part of your fluid. If you eat Jello, that's part of your fluid. So when you're on a fluid restriction, as many older people are, either for congestive heart problems or
Mm-hmm.
for decreased functioning kidneys, or even if you're already on the dialysis machine, you have to talk to the doctor and find out what is the best way to stay hydrated. And you have to stay on top of your lab work because it wouldn't take much to upset the balance of your sodium and potassium, and that affects your muscle function, affects your brain function. Uh, it, you know, you, if you don't have enough fluid in one part of your body, then maybe your bowels are going to be out of control. Uh, it's a tricky balance. Um,
Yeah.
but for people like, say, a cancer patient who, or somebody else with a chronic illness with GI problems that cannot tolerate a lot of food, you can kind of sneak water in with popsicles if it's a child, and even some of my older adults. I suggest Pedialyte popsicles. Jello is another way to get. People can't drink, but they can eat Jello, and Jello turns to liquid as soon as it hits your
Yeah.
mouth.
What about like apple juice, orange juice? Do you recommend that for someone to hydrate? Because I mean, it got that sugar in it, but like, what's
Well, the sugar is an issue, and orange juice is high in potassium. So if you can't be doing any of those choices without discussing it with a nutritionist or your doctor, because when you're having compromised kidneys, you usually have higher levels of potassium. Higher levels of potassium might lead to muscle cramping, things like that. Twitching in your body, uncontrolled twitching. It could be pulling too much fluid out too fast just because the electrolytes are out of balance. So this is one time to really have a lot of faith and a good relationship with your doctor, so you can make the restrictions work in your life. And like that, getting back to the diet, a lot of people are trying the intermittent fasting. That is, from a hydration point of view, really not a good idea for anybody that has medical problems, for sure. If you're a diabetic, you've got to have an even level of sugar going through your body, especially if you're taking diabetic medication. Intermittent fasting is going to just knock your sugar levels all over the place, either very low, very high, and the extremes of anything are not healthy. Um, there's another type of intermittent fasting called dry fasting,
mm-hmm.
where you can't have water or chicken broth or anything like that. It's supposed to make you feel younger. Um, I think some of these diets, and a lot of the diet, over the counter diet medication, actually functions by spending a lot of time in the bathroom. Um,
Yeah.
I think Goli is one of those, and there's a couple of them that the way to lose weight is flush it down the toilet, and that that has its side effects as far as keeping a balance and keeping your mind just functioning. If you've got a job that your mind's got to be really alert, healthcare, police, IT, anything, I mean, most jobs you have to be alert.
Yeah.
Um,
And
and people don't realize that nutrition, your food is medicine. And you have to treat everything that you eat and drink as if it is medicine, even if it's not prescribed by a doctor, because it actually affects your every aspect of your life. You could be driving and all of a sudden get confused because um, you're dehydrated, didn't realize it.
yeah.
Christmas time when people are going shopping for the holidays, nobody wants to stop and go to those public bathrooms and stuff.
No.
I know during COVID, as a visiting nurse, it was very challenging for me to find public bathrooms that were clean and open and available.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and so basically, I didn't drink as much as I should because it was too inconvenient. Some of the places I went to just weren't,
Got it.
to the standards
Well,
that I would like to be in. And nothing against the companies that were providing those facilities, But if everybody's out and using them because you don't want to use them at people's houses, things like that, you know, it's it's an issue. Uh, so it's you really have to be on top of your game when it comes to taking care of yourself because you can't take care of your family. When you have younger children, you want them
Yeah.
to develop healthy habits to begin with. I mean, I did not like vegetables as a child. Um, and they have supplements that are supposed to replace your
Mhm.
your vegetables, but that doesn't work as well as eating the natural things that you're
Okay.
supposed to eat. And I used to joke about how I grew up so I didn't have to eat vegetables, and then when I wanted my kids to eat cauliflower, I mashed it up so they thought they were eating funny tasting mashed potatoes, but they ate the cauliflower. I
Yep,
didn't
you
tell
got it
them
in
until
there.
10 years later that wasn't mashed potatoes they were eating.
Now, what
um,
about too much water? I've heard of a thing called water intoxication, right? So,
Water intoxication, and I think there was just something in the news just recently. I don't remember the specifics. It was probably an athlete, or I think after a marathon race or something. Uh, and he only consumed like six bottles of water, but in like 10 or 12 minutes because the running, the excessive exercise made him really thirsty. He thought he was doing a healthy thing, and it killed him.
yeah.
Water intoxication. Sometimes it's called water poisoning, water toxemia, different names for it. But what happens is when you're drinking so much water, you're pulling out the sodium that's in your body, your muscles, your brain. Every sodium is a very important part of your body, and that sodium potassium relationship. So water intoxication just gets you into instant imbalance, and very few bodies can actually handle that.
Mhm.
Um, but endurance sports, marathon runners, they're typically the ones that are in that situation. Um, Even your pet, you have some dogs that just, I know my English bulldogs, they bite at the water, and I have to I never fill a full bowl of water because if I had a gallon sized bowl, they would drink it till it was
Yep,
gone.
I know, right?
And animals can get water intoxication too, and their behavior is the same as people. They get confused, their balance is off, they might be walking leaning towards one side. um, a lot of the rules that apply to us also apply to to our pets.
Yep.
um, Psychiatric conditions can lead to water intoxication issues because the doctor might say, while you're on this medicine, you have to drink plenty of water. I tell my chemo patients,
Mm.
chemo is processed, same thing with antibiotics, it's processed through your kidneys. So you need the medicine, but you also need to get it out of your body once it does its job. And if you have a psychiatric condition, maybe an obsessive compulsive type person, they might think, I have to drink all this water or I'm going to have a poison level of drugs in me. And that's just their brain, getting them confused and not understanding, maybe not talking to the doctors and trusting enough to know that excess anything is no good. Excessive drinking is no good. Excessive coffee is no good. Excessive chocolate is no good. Excessive exercise is usually no good. But there are people that people with eating disorders, that they will just run for miles to burn off 100 calories. And um, so everything is moderation and common sense. But if there's a fine line of when you've got that common sense and awareness, and the confusion that comes from being dehydrated happens so fast that you don't realize.
Yeah.
Uh, you might not realize that you have a urinary tract infection until, like, gosh, why am I going to the bathroom 10 times a day?
Yeah.
And you're drinking and drinking and drinking, which, it's a treadmill that needs,
Yeah, that's ooh,
um, but it all contributes to too much. And, it's a lot of work just to take care of ourselves. And if we have families to take care of too and job responsibilities, um, it's not easy to be a human. When you don't have your parents taking care of you, and sometimes they didn't know better either. Uh, and a lot of times, I know my parents were first generation Polish, um, so they had a lot of old country. No, not a lot of education, but a little old country what we would have thought maybe were wives' tales or whatever. And as I got an adult, I realized, oh my gosh, this is why my mother did this, and she didn't even know. Uh, in high
Exactly.
school, when I wanted to dye my hair like the other classmates, my mother knew that that wasn't the healthiest thing for my hair. She said I could use lemon juice on my hair for highlights. And I got really nice, healthy highlights. When my nails were brittle and people were doing things to get their nails stronger, my mother made me drink Knox gelatin. I still hate Knox gelatin, but it
Oh,
helped my nails.
oh,
And
that's great.
that was just the kind of thing that they didn't know why they were doing what they do, but it got passed on through generations.
Got it.
And, so it's hydration is such an important part of our life, and people just think it's no big deal.
And I just want to point out before we go that we can't also be misled by these energy drinks. There's a lot in the news about them, right? Because they might be mistaking us for hydration, but they're really not. And that's what scares me. How do you know which energy drink is good for us or not? What are some signs?
Well, the energy drinks and I've, as a nurse working more than I want to sometimes, I've taken energy drinks, but I only take the ones that are really vitamin B. Well, I don't take the ones with caffeine. People are having heart attacks, and some people, the Red Bulls with the caffeine, uh, kids are like drinking them so they can outlast their kids, their friends, in competitions and things like that. Um, they don't realize because they're not sophisticated enough emotionally to understand what it's doing to their whole emotional status. Um, but I mean, even before we had energy drinks, adults were using caffeine, overusing caffeine, especially night shift people. By 7 o'clock in the morning on night shift, you're buzzing all over the place. All you did was have a few cups of coffee, but that wasn't healthy for your heart.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. All right. Well, thanks for
Everybody's
that.
drinking the electrolyte drinks now,
Is that good?
and they're even selling Pedialyte for adults. Gatorade has an electrolyte product, which I thought was great. And just recently, I'll share something personal. I was drinking a lot of that because it was very hot and humid. Um, I didn't want to drink soda. Water is not one of my favorites, but if sometimes I'll add lemon juice or something, it makes it a little
Mm-hmm.
more palatable. But I had a couple days of lots of Gatorade and lots of electrolyte supplements, and ended up with kidney stones
Oh, gosh. Go
because
figure,
there's
right?
there's a lot of potassium and calcium in those, which in normal amounts is okay.
Yeah.
But
Well,
again, excessively, I ended up with kidney stones.
and I hope you
And
get through them okay. Good luck with this.
well, I had to switch back to water.
Okay,
Water.
good.
The lesson here is water is
Aw.
gold and it's cheap.
Well, thank you, Peggy, for being here. We must wrap up. Tell us how we could reach you.
Okay. You can reach me by email or phone. My phone is area code 267-593-5557. I am on YouTube with Happy Possibilities Hypnosis. Um, Shortly, within the next few weeks, I will actually have a talk show which will be talking about different health and alternative health topics. So there's lots of ways. You can reach me email, not just hypnosis at gmail.com. And I also do virtual sessions for people. I am a certified health nutrition coach, in addition to being a nurse and hypnotist and energy practitioner. So I have a lot of options. And,
All right.
foremost, I like to think of myself as a patient advocate. And I like to teach people that none of us are victims of healthcare. We have choices.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Peggy. Talk to you soon. Thank you again and feel better. We'll talk next
Thank you.
week
You
or
too.
soon. Bye.
Are you looking for even more of the podcasts and hosts that you love? The Podcast Business News Network is proud to announce that you now have even more ways to listen live. Check out the MyTuner Radio, online radio box, and Simple Radio apps on iOS and Android, or find us online. Search for Business News Network on mytuner-radio.com, or search Podcast Business News Network on streama.com and onlineradiobox.com/US. Take your podcast on the go and don't miss a minute of the action.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
For nearly 2,000 severely injured veterans, everyday life has become filled with barriers.
Day-to-day simple tasks can become pretty daunting.
I have to carry my chair up 2 flights of steps or have somebody do it for me.
What scares me the most is just the falling.
When I'm struggling with my house, I think, to have that one great barrier just knocked down, it's crucial.
Home for Our Troops is a wonderful nonprofit that builds a
Mortgage-free, fully adaptive, handicap-accessible house. And there's no catch.
It'll be our very first home that we've ever owned. This is a game changer.
This is where your life begins again.
We need you to join us in completing this important mission. Please visit hfotusa.org and help build homes and rebuild lives.
Because of you, everything's going to be okay.